I hit that shit hard.
This is dabbing, a more potent and increasingly popular way of using high THC pot. Just a hit is 10 times stronger than a joint or higher. So popular, it's hard to keep up with the nicknames. Honey, honeycomb, shatter, butter. The dab is the gooey or hard substance placed in the glass, then lit with a butane torch. If you want to know more about this, just ask your kids. This Denver East high schooler asked that his face not be shown, so you'll hear just his voice. Next to him is his mom. Just one of many voices to follow that make up the culture of today's pot.
People like dabs, people like, it's just like whatever's easier to get.
Yeah.
You know, kids with higher incomes tend to have the fancy glass pieces and whatnot, so they tend to dab a lot. And you know, lower income kids buy their blunt wraps and stuff like that, so.
Do you know what you're getting every time you eat whatever you get?
I know I'm getting some dank ass weed.
They are indeed getting high-potency weed. This is a map of how many shops are in the Denver area alone, a few years after Colorado's Amendment 64 passed to allow recreational pot. It's everywhere, in every form imaginable, including flowers and buds, natural and genetically modified strains, ultra-potent liquids and waxes, and pot-infused candies, cookies, drinks, and foods. That's the dangerous mystery for parents, hospitals, addiction counselors, and the Denver District Attorney's Office, the office that prosecutes all criminal cases in Denver. Meet Tim Twining, Senior Chief Deputy District Attorney, Juvenile and Drug Courts. I mean, with these kids, do they know what they're smoking or doing?
Well, that's a great question. It's hard to know, right?
Twining has prosecuted some of the biggest crime cases in Colorado. Now his focus is juveniles, drugs, and the gang unit. He says the crime increase surrounding the influx of pot is off the charts.
First of all, there is so much illegal marijuana in the city, and how that has grown and how that's marketed, it's anybody's guess, right? So what they're getting with that stuff, they have no idea. We see it all the time. I handled a case earlier this year at a Denver public school where a friend sold $5 worth of marijuana to a girl and to her friend, and they both consumed it. And within 90 minutes, the girl was rushed to the hospital having a seizure, and the boy who also consumed it, who was experienced with marijuana, or so he said, he too had to go to the hospital. So at the end of the day, neither one of them really knew what they were consuming. They thought they were buying it from a friend so it would be safe. As it turns out, she was literally laying on the classroom floor having a seizure. This isn't your grandfather's marijuana anymore.
A 15-year-old boy is dead and a 14-year-old may be paralyzed after apparently trying to steal marijuana plants from a Denver backyard.
Just last week, we had a man growing in his backyard and shot the juveniles who tried to steal it and killed one of them. There's kind of a general lack of information by the public, and maybe even some apathy. Oh, it's just marijuana. But we're seeing armed robberies, shootings like I described, and use just going off the charts.
In spring of 2017, a politically powerful group of doctors who advocate just for children, the American Academy of Pediatrics, released a statement against marijuana use by kids up to the age of 25. The report makes two strong points. One, today's marijuana is much more potent and potentially risky. Two, the 40% of kids that have used across our country are setting themselves up for changes in the brain that are permanent. Dr. Christian Thurston of Denver knows this all too well. He's authored research and even a book on the topic of addiction and the teen brain. On average, Dr. Thurston and a staff of 8 counselors treat 300 kids a week just for marijuana addiction. 300 kids.
The peak ages of marijuana use really are age 16 to 20, and then it really drops off after that. And it's very unfortunate that that's the case because it's adolescents and children who suffer disproportionately when their brains are exposed to the substance.
Those against recreational marijuana say Nevada, especially us here right in Las Vegas, should expect the same.
It's not just Colorado. As of 2017, pot addiction is the top reason kids and teens in the United States are admitted for substance abuse. Recent research just in the last decade on the adolescent brain sounded an alarm for scientists and doctors. While they knew the brain reached full size and weight at around age 6, researchers didn't know that serious construction of brain pathways kick into gear in adolescence. Many parents like to think of alcohol and pot as soft drugs. The adolescent brain doesn't. The intensity of the high is the same or stronger than an adult's.
This is the brain reward circuit right here.
Like pleasure center?
The pleasure center. So food, sex, drugs, they all work through this part of the brain right here. So whether it's nicotine, alcohol, marijuana, heroin, they all work through this part of the brain right here.
Thurston runs one of the biggest youth substance treatment centers in Colorado. The hundreds of kids he sees call him Dr. T. And in the short time we visited with him, kids were knocking on his door waiting for their afternoon sessions. Here he shows a map of the developing brain and why parents should look at the pink dots to understand why pot is so addictive for kids, teens, and young adults.
An important thing about this is that we know that these pink dots, the CB1 receptor it's called, help control brain development. So the density of these pink dots peaks in childhood and then goes down thereafter. Tons of these receptors in an area of the brain called the hippocampus, which is really important for learning and memory. This is a structure that's damaged with adolescent exposure to marijuana, at least in animal studies. Lots of these receptors in the prefrontal cortex, which is really important for judgment, organization, thinking ahead.
Even today's legal and commercially sold pot has no limits on THC potency. At the other end of the spectrum are low to zero THC marijuana oils used by kids for seizures and adults for pain. These products are now federally regulated. It is critical for parents to understand the THC levels of every product available to teenagers. Adolescence is a natural time of impulse and experimentation. If today's high-potency pot becomes part of their lives, the effects are unpredictable and at times dangerous.
Very potent marijuana can cause psychotic reactions, so a break with reality, feeling very paranoid. Also pure THC, so very potent marijuana, can cause a lot of anxiety. So we see people presenting with severe anxiety attacks as well.
Marijuana-related incidents have led to a 117% increase in ER visits. Maybe the hardest-hit health system is in Pueblo, Colorado. ER docs are so overworked that hospitals can't recruit doctors to come work here, and the ones that are here want to leave.
I'm not even sure why, but I totally feel less safe here than I did in inner city Detroit.
Dr. Karen Randall is an emergency room doctor in Pueblo.
This last year, we've all noticed this incredible wave of people coming into the community. Every shift that I work, every shift that my colleagues work, they say they've had 2 or 3 or 10 patients who just say they moved in from Missouri or Texas or all the surrounding states, and they're here, they have no funds, they're essentially homeless, and they need services.
Here's the Fountain Creek and the Arkansas River, and you can, as you can see, that all the camps, all the homeless camps are along the riverbeds.
The city is a gateway stop, north to south along the river for much of Colorado. The schools and hospitals and help agencies report they are overwhelmed with new residents, families and individuals that were already on assistance in their home state. Many are homeless and camp along the river. To get their government-issued cards, they can buy addresses off of Craigslist. There are places that want to help, like this day shelter called Posada.
They can cook a meal, they have to clean up behind themselves.
They offer food and a shower and computers, a respite during the day. There is so much demand for food, the supplies need to be restocked each day. Outside of Pueblo, in Beulah, Colorado, are some of the largest industrial grows that supply the big business of selling legal pot, from one side of the highway to the other. Officials say the infrastructure of Pueblo has been impacted by the pot industry more than any other Colorado city. And the healthcare system is dealing with one more disturbing trend. The head of the neonatal unit at the second largest Pueblo hospital is reporting a dramatic increase of newborns with marijuana in their system. The experts that treat the exposed teen brain also have research on THC and babies.
The children exposed to marijuana before they're born have lower IQ at age 5. They have more behavior problems, more depression at age 10. They have lower school achievement as well. And then at age 14, unfortunately, they're more likely to use substances themselves.
While Amendment 64 addressed recreational pot for those 21 and older, it's kids, the new pot, and potency that has Colorado's governor concerned.
When you're a teenager, your brain is growing very, very rapidly. The high THC marijuana we have is so intense in the way it affects your synapses and those parts of your brain that literally every brain scientist I've talked to feels there's a very high probability that even if you only smoke once a week, this high THC marijuana, if you're a teenager, it will take a sliver of your long-term memory forever.
His concern echoes throughout the community of psychiatry and addiction counseling in Colorado. Addiction counselors question an adult law that clearly continues to affect the younger generation with access all over the state, especially the new ways to consume potent pot, the edibles.
Are you concerned about the fact that one edible may have 13% THC, but another thing may be up to...
I am totally concerned about that because it becomes in the chemical structure of the THC. It doesn't melt down, and so how it gets distributed to an edible, it's totally unpredictable. You don't know how much THC it's going to be contained in a piece of candy.
Psychotherapist Francesca Finks treats addicts in group and single sessions. Overall, 95% of referrals aren't for heroin or even alcohol. 95% are marijuana related.
You probably are exposing a young adult to the risk of losing the essence of adolescence.
Back to this high schooler. He says most underage kids buy from street dealers. What non-smokers and a lot of parents don't get, he says, it's that it's not just smoking weed. It's an entire culture.
Kids like to be legal when they're old enough, but of course they're going to get into it beforehand because, it's not treated it's treated as a medicine, but it's also treated as a subculture, and that's what people need to understand.
This culture, in research outlined in Dr. Christian Thurston's book, Clearing the Haze, indicates that very much like big tobacco, getting kids hooked early is a gold mine for the business of pot.
Marijuana predicts up to an 8-point drop in IQ if it's heavy exposure beginning in adolescence going into adulthood. We also know that exposure to marijuana during adolescence predicts a 2- to 4-fold increased rate of schizophrenia and psychosis, which is basically a break with reality, hearing things that aren't there, seeing things that aren't there, in adulthood.
This mom's kids went to Cherry Creek High School. She was focused on starting a nonprofit to help kids get internships and jobs. That's when she started talking and listening to kids about their peers' challenges. When she asked what the #1 obstacle to kids succeeding, their answer, pot.
And they were telling me that, they were worried about their friends that they used to be really close to, that suddenly didn't care about anything, that were uninvolved, friends that were dropping out of school, siblings. They were telling me about uncles and aunts, about their parents, and that they felt like nobody was talking about it.
So Carlson's focus changed. She co-founded Smart Colorado, which began as a platform for Colorado's kids to have a voice in pot policy.
Smart Colorado's sole goal, and the only reason we formed, was to protect kids as marijuana became legalized. And we formed after protecting kids, and public health and safety ranked last in the priorities of the policy-making body.
Smart Colorado's policy is put kids first. Their work, supported by all 4 of Colorado's living ex-governors, is to get basic safeguards for kids into law. This includes public disclosure and education around potency, products, and intake methods, and requiring truth in labeling, warnings, and product claims. This mom, who's been familiar with pot from the 1980s low-potency plants and buds, says today's products are so potent and so confusing.
I'm a little concerned about it because there's so much out there. Nobody knows the power or potency of it, and I do think it has an impact on younger kids at the potency. Like when I was younger, it was like swag, is all you could get. I would appreciate labeling about the potency for everyone, but yeah, if kids are getting into it, if we have this level of intelligence about marijuana at this point in our culture where we have the ability to do that, why can't we do that overall and continue being thoughtful about it? Because I feel like kids are smart. They're smart enough to want to know those things as well.
So parents and all adults who care about kids have to be smart. They have to have the conversation. A good starting point, science is on your side. The new research shows definitive conclusions on how your child's brain is affected by THC. The doctors who care for your children across our country that make up the American Academy of Pediatrics say any use of pot is just too risky with a developing brain. There are answers out there, so ask the hard questions for all of our kids. We end with one final voice, Colorado mom Aubrey Adams, who posted this video on YouTube in 2017. With signs and silent pain, she tells her story.
Make me want to hold a call, so I do. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And there's a fear on the line. I make it roll on in my mind on Friday time. Grace that I let go to sing myself a different tune, something new. I've been hurting her